Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining the Behind Company Lines podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Akbar Thobhani, CEO and co-founder of sFOX, a full-service crypto prime broker bringing together liquidity, best price execution, dark pool access, treasury management, custody, and settlement services all together in one trading platform and API. Akbar, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm really excited to chat with you and learn more about your experience sFOX and what the company is doing now. But before we dive into all that, what were you doing before you started the company?
First of all, Julian, thank you so much for having me. You're great. So I'm excited to be here.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
So look, right before I started this company, I was with Airbnb. And there we had to send money to 190 countries. We're dealing with, all different currencies. What you realize is that there is no global financial infrastructure for companies that go global. And so, the closest that came to it was Bitcoin and the Bitcoin blockchain. I had played with Bitcoin, back when I was at MIT, back in 2009. So it was an obvious kind of marriage of here's a big problem that everyone has in the world, a lack of financial infrastructure, and here's the solution. And so that's really what got me started with this company.
That's amazing. And so within that whole discovery process and working with different countries, what was like some of the biggest hurdles you faced? It sounds so easy. Book your Airbnb, go to that location, pay through whatever payment service. But what are some of the barriers that you have to, move past when you're doing business internationally like that some people might not know of?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, when you are doing any international transactions, one of the big pieces is actually sending money. And that even for the companies is really hard. Sometimes if you are working with people that are in remote regions with smaller banks, the wire transfers usually take a lot longer. And so when you look at Bitcoin, you're like, okay, I can actually take that and transfer that within 1 hour, 24/7, 7 days a week. Most banks stop wires at 1 p.m. Pacific time on
Yeah.
Fridays. And then Monday morning is when you can start. But what happens when you have transactions on the weekend? So, an infrastructure that just like you send an email, you can send an email on the weekend. Why can't you just send money on the weekend? So really that's where it started. But I think the key to keep in mind though is that blockchain has gone a lot from just being a Bitcoin to becoming this,
Right.
infrastructure for, for financial contracts and other financial transactions.
Yeah. Yeah. It really grown to be so, kind of, I would say it's like growing to this ingrained, financial structure that we're all going to be, using at some point, especially on the institutional level, but on the consumer level as well. But Darling, going back from your experience, were you always headed in this direction? It sounds like, you saw the problem, you solved it. But in terms of this entrepreneurship direction, where did all that come from? If you were to take me back a little bit further in your experience, working with startups and building companies and then working with bigger companies like Airbnb and now with sFOX, where did all this inspiration to seek out the unknown come from?
Yeah. And look, I think seeking out the unknown is, a personal passion of mine. So when I joined JPL back in the day, we had to say to explore new places and leave a trail behind. And I think ultimately that's what I enjoy. I enjoy identifying new areas and setting something up so that everyone else can also kind of get there. Stamps.com was the same way. I worked at Stamps.com back in the day. They were a startup. Eventually became big. I worked at Boku, which is mobile payments. Again, it was a startup that went public a couple of years ago. Airbnb was also a startup. So, I do like to start early and essentially build something unique and something that creates value in the world.
Yeah. What's common amongst those experiences of starting, obviously very different products across the board. But what's similar about those experiences, building companies from the ground level to, either an exit or to, large kind of enterprise company?
Yeah, they all have one thing in common. They all use technology to solve a problem.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
the problems might be different, the markets might be different, but they use technology in a unique way to solve that problem. I think the second thing that they all have in common is that they're all transactional based. If you noticed,
Mhm.
there's a transaction. It's not just a communication platform; it's a transaction based. So be it commerce, global travel, or sFOX. So that's, those are common thread. But really I think that the key is really how can you use technology to simplify something? And that's
Yeah.
really what I look for.
And when you go through this process of discovery, I think a lot of founders, or people even not within the founder community, view problems in a few different ways. One, it's through an experience that then kind of almost like a light bulb moment where you kind of see something that needs to be solved, and then you work toward that problem. Others kind of see it more proactively within their day to day life. How do you go about finding problems to solve, or is it also experience? What's your process, in identifying now, I think the third or fourth problem that you're solving?
Uh, it's actually very straightforward. You talk to people.
Yeah.
The more people you can talk to, the better you get at identifying problems. You also look for trends. So if you kind of notice, a lot of these businesses are really similar, and they kind of do similar things to use the technology. But you kind of want to be early at solving those problems. You don't want to be the last at solving that problem. So you talk to people and you look for trends.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I feel like the founder journey is a lot of that when you have an inkling and an idea or something like communication with people and customers, and it starts to develop into the elephant in the room where that you just can't ignore. So in regards to sFOX, I love what you're doing there, and the bottle of water, fantastic. And we were talking before the show how cool that was. Hopefully somebody gives you a meal and a plate and everything like that. That'd be the best. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about Xbox and Xbox and the traction you're facing, and the partners you're starting to work with and where it's grown to now.
Yeah, look, when we started Netfox, it was literally out of a garage, and then like we were building it, and every day we would meet to just solve one problem for that day. Today we do have a full service platform. We've gone from just being a trade execution platform to liquidity providing, custody. We recently got a new Wyoming trust license. We launched our NDF project, which is a derivative product. So the products that we've gone away from just like a trade execution to full service prime broker services.
Yeah.
In terms of customers, we've gone from, I would say, individual and professional to being a premier institutional platform. Some of the biggest hedge funds in the space use our platform. Some of the traditional banks, names that you've probably heard of that I can't talk about yet. They're all interested in using this platform. So I think this is it's gone from just, hey, this is a hobby in the garage to actually becoming a real product.
Amazing, amazing. And when you're going through this building and development process, it sounds like two different customers that you were, at one point you were doing individuals, professionals, and then institutions. How does that evolution take place? What was the decision maker to kind of move from one customer to another, or I don't know if you're still working with both customers, expanding that reach? What are the challenges, and what's that evolution look like?
Yeah, no, really good question. So professional traders is really what we focused on, and we continue to focus on them because, every group has lots of different ways of looking at it, but we wanted to build a platform that was for professional traders. And so institutions usually hire these traders, and so it was a natural extension because they understand what a good trading platform would look like. And so the more traders traded with our platform, the more we realized what we needed to add, like the custody. And so we did. But a lot of it really came from just listening to the customers, listening to our team, and then taking that one step at a time. I think everyone wants to kind of become big overnight. And the reality is all startups are, great overnight successes, usually after years in the making. So,
Yeah.
I think at the end of the day, that it just takes a long time and you just work hard and you build something.
Yeah. What are some of the challenges you're facing with building in Web3 at its current state right now?
I think Web3 is so early and so nascent that I think a lot of how it will be used and how it will be managed and how it will be regulated is still unclear. And so we do find ourselves experimenting a lot.
Yeah.
The good thing is, we do have a good revenue stream from our trading activities. but there's a lot of experimentation because it's clear that Web3, the technology itself is very interesting, but the use case in the application is still in the early phases.
Yeah. 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 It's growing from what its conception was to now what it is, and the different regulations that are kind of guiding its growth in that direction. It's interesting to see how kind of the push and pull of that experience in a growing product. But I'm curious a little bit more about the space in Web3 and where sFOX kind of is leading towards in that direction. Is it offering more kind of trading services that you guys have built into this platform, and just kind of more financial services that, or is there something else? Is there something bigger that kind of you're leaning towards, or have a inkling that might be more worth in terms of value to your customer base in the future?
Yeah. So look, I think Web3 is really the use of decentralized platforms.
Yeah.
And in that you have a token. A lot of the Web3 companies actually don't have a company. Wyoming has the way to actually register what's called a DAO or DAO.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's say you're starting a Web3 company, you set up a DAO. Maybe if you go to Wyoming and set that up. Well, if there is no company and you have all of its tokens, where do you hold it? And how do you manage it? How do you distribute it? How do you secure it? That's kind of what we focus on. We still focus on the financial services of Web3. So if you want to do asset management of those tokens, you want to distribute that to your users, you want to kind of hold on to that in a custody, we can help with all of those services. And that's why we've got a Wyoming trust license, so that as a trust company in Wyoming, if you've registered a DAO, we can work with you and we can help you.
Yeah, that's amazing. Where do you think how far out, maybe it's years, I don't know how many, are we from adopting, Web3 and the technology as, not something that we invest in trading, but something that we use as, for not only like financial services are belonging, but also, your wallets and actually, using for transactions. How far are we from adopting this type of technology in our day-to-day lives? In your opinion?
Yeah. I mean, this is where no matter what I say, it's going to be wrong. But basically, I think Web3, as you said, it starts with financial transactions. I'm not sure if it will become ubiquitous to all users anytime soon. I think a lot of the growth in blockchain and Web3 will come from, I would say, institutions over the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
Underlying, right? Do I think individuals will hold this, stable coins and manage it? Yeah, I do think that. And I think that as the rise of stable coins happens, as more and more people learn how to use these wallets, I do think there will be kind of growth in management of that. But I don't think that it replaces any of the current financial infrastructures right away, because it is fairly early.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it makes sense. I would just like to ask a question to get somewhat of an answer. I don't but I appreciate the honesty there. In terms of just like, as you're building technology and the experience from Airbnb and now seeing it used as a global way to exchange, goods and services and use that as a currency. What does that mean in terms of the ability for businesses to work internationally, in terms of the global growth? Is it giving more access to other opportunities on a smaller scale and letting those grow? And that's kind of my hope and my want. But is it also, or more so, giving more wealth to those who have kind of the means to access this technology now?
Yeah, I think technology should always be open and ubiquitous. I don't think that technology should be limited by, to people that have money or luck. Because really the power of technology is really to, essentially open the world up. And I think it will continue to do that. I don't think that people with wealth will actually be the only one, with the technology. I mean, just take into account Bitcoin. Everyone was after Bitcoin, but now we have Ethereum.
Yeah.
And there's so many other blockchains and tokens that people can invest in. So I do think that, to the extent that there is such a thing as a global financial network and platform,
Mm-hmm.
A blockchain is that. And it does really open the world up to kind of level the playing field.
Mhm.
Um, but I don't think it's also a mechanism for wealth distribution or redistribution. I don't think that blockchain is a good medium for that. And I don't think that's going to happen. I think governments are best suited to manage that.
Yeah. Yeah. Here's with your experiences building companies from, from the ground up and doing so multiple times over. What are some kind of key features that you look for companies that will have success? Seeing so many go through so many evolutions, and now
Yeah.
sFOX is working within a new space and environment. So you can think of it as a new product, but it seems like a repeatable process. Like, what are some key features that you see will lead to success of not only the current company you're working on, but other companies around you?
I think first and foremost, you've got to solve a problem, right? There's got to
Yeah.
be a problem you're solving. Yeah. The more severe the problem, the better. Second, generally once you've solved the problem, you also want to make sure that there's some way to monetize, because if you can't, those tend to kind of struggle over time. So there has to be a good monetization mechanism. Now, to add to that, if you can add viral growth, um, that is phenomenal. But it's not a necessary thing, right?
Sure.
It could be there, great. But if it's not, you can still build big businesses that don't have viral growth. But the
Yeah.
first two are really important.
Yeah. When you say viral growth, is that like, was that like you going viral? Essentially, is that, kind of exposure and like fast exposure and adoption from like, your customer base? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, if you have some sort of a network externality, right? If,
Yeah.
you know, uh, emails, right? If I can email you, you can email me, then the value of email increases for both of us. But if I'm only on the email access and no one else has it in the world, it's worth zero to me. So
Right.
the more people have it, the valuability. So if you have that kind of a mechanism in your platform or in your product, that's the third piece that I look for.
Yeah, I'm reading a book that founder recommended to me called Contagious, and it's all about this idea of word of mouth and spreading your product by word of mouth as the best medium for getting your message across, people to adopt your product. I'm not sure if you've read the book or not, but I'm curious on how that works. Like, we all think about this going viral. I think for my generation, it's about social media posts and either making the funniest video or something that's extremely relevant to that point in time. How do you view it from a product standpoint on helping your product become viral and being adopted more quickly, more readily by your customer base or by a broader audience?
Yeah, I can think of it from a product perspective, right? So generally, um, I want to talk about sFOX for a second. Um,
Yeah.
you know, our platform is a buyer and a seller platform.
Hmm.
So the more buyers I have, the more value for the seller. The more sellers you have, the more value for the buyers. And so that essentially means that the more I can add of each side, the value gets created for everyone.
Yeah.
And so that's something that you can look at from a product perspective. Certainly, if you have one-on-one communication, right? If you're withdrawing coins on our platform and you're settling with someone else, if you can make it so that they're both on our platform, then that also increases viral growth. So, transactions, deposits, and withdrawals, all of those can add to growth from a product side. I think, on the social media, right? It's no different. It's like following and
Yeah.
retweeting, right? So, it's kind of very similar where if you can create more value every time a new user adds, uh, and you create that value by growing the value for all users, that's what it matters. In terms of marketing communication, which is the part you're talking about, not an area that I focus on at all.
Yeah.
I think that people are really good at that. And it's something that I should probably learn from them about.
Yeah. Well, I love the value piece, and I think I've heard it time and time again, and it's just been echoed. So I hope the audience is listening because it is such a thing about doing good work, adding value to both of your parties. For me, we run a marketplace at Auto Labs, so that we have two pieces of our marketplace, it's two-sided marketplace, and it's really about how can we increase the value and work the seesaw. So I asked it from a product perspective because in selfishly, I'm curious on your experience, but being within sFOX and going back to your building and what you're building today, what are some of the biggest risks that your company faces as you continue to grow and you continue to work with more partners and add new products to your platform?
Yeah, look, I think some of the earlier risks were, will crypto survive? I don't think that's a question anymore. I think crypto is here to stay and is it continue to grow? Um, but there are other risks, making sure that our product continues to be competitive in the market. The space is evolving so fast that we continue to develop new ways of attracting customers and creating value for them. Um, I think regulatory is another big unknown because, the laws in the space are still new.
Mhm.
In many ways, it's a good thing for us when, new laws come out because it does create clarity. Uh, and we've built a platform that really just follows regulations. So I think in many ways, it's a good thing, but it is an unknown. It's something that we need to be prepared for.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And if everything goes well within what you're building, what is the long-term vision for sFOX? Where do you see it going? Who do you see it working with? And what do you see it becoming in terms of its overall impact?
Yeah, look, I think long term, if we can build a global financial network that, again, will be used by professionals, right? So institutions, money managers, RIAs. I think that can create a foundation for a lot of the people around the world to use blockchain. Because I don't think that all individuals will go to the blockchain directly. I think they'll all go through some intermediary. And so creating that network and infrastructure to give a lot of these businesses access to the blockchain, it's really, really kind of the ultimate goal.
Yeah, no, that's incredible. Well, I'm really excited about where sFOX is going, the different products and the different people and stakeholders you're working with. It's amazing to see the adaptation of Web3 technology into so many different areas, especially within financial services, because that ability to access it, it only trickles down to consumers and really offers, like you said, that infrastructure that allows a lot of people to use it through an intermediary. So yeah, overall, just really excited about that. Bonus question I like to ask all my guests for selfish research and for them to get more information and seek out more information is what books or people have influenced you the most?
Oh, that's a good question. I think I read a book on when you hear of hoof speech, think of a zebra. I thought that was a very eye-opening book. It really changed my perspective. So I think, as a result of that kind of, I think you asked me the question in the very beginning, what inspires me to think differently.
Yeah,
And it is that kind of thinking where, you know, you don't just follow what everyone else is kind of the norm is. And sometimes you do need to think a little differently in order to come up with ideas that are different. And so I highly recommend that book.
amazing, amazing. And obviously it's been such a pleasure having you on the show. I'm excited to share this with the audience, but where can we support you? I'd love to learn more about your plugs. Give me your LinkedIn, your Twitters. Where can we be a supporter of sFOX? And not only that, get more information like this from someone like yourself.
sFOX.com, right? You register, it's free to register. You can use it as a free wallet, and then give us feedback, do some trading, give us feedback because we'll only get better if we hear from the people.
Amazing. Amazing. Akbar, well, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm really excited to share this with the audience. And not only, have I learned a lot from your experience, but from where you've taken sFOX and your other company that you work with. I hope you enjoyed yourself on the show. And again, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course.